the course of the next 5 months, we're going to start a beginning draft of a regional Green New Deal. As both Carl and Fred said, we need a much more representative room. And I'm going to be asking for all of us to reach out to the people that we think will be most affected, that are being most affected by the climate crisis. We're a pretty white room. Take a look around, right? So we need to get out of our comfort zone in a lot of ways. We need to also reach out to people who, you know, there's a lot of people that consider themselves the moderate middle. And they don't see the ways in which Democrats have also been a big part of our climate crisis right here in southwestern PA, right? You know, if you look at where campaign contributions go in the Democratic Party, that money is paying off for the fracking industry, for the petrochemical industry. So we need to be thinking as we go along, how can we hold the whole range of political ideologies to account and push them? You know, Sean talked about the New Deal for the earlier 20th century. The only reason that happened is because there were mass movements that were rising, that people who were struggling together against poverty and the devastations of capitalism. It would never have happened if there hadn't been that push from below. So, for those of you who have read Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, her Green New Deal, what's missing, right? What does she not cover that grows out of our own experience in this region? I admire and respect her so much, but she said it. I can't decide what you need. So what is it that we see around us that we need to make sure to focus on?
I just feel like we need to figure out how to deal with we have a lot of addicts in this region. I mean, that's one, and a lot of crime.
Hold on, I'm sorry, guys.
Let me see if I can get it for you.
So it was this.
So, wait a second. We need to get,
The whiteboard, here we go.
sorry. This. Try that.
Cool. All right. So healthcare is talked about in the Green New Deal as a critical part of that change. So would you say addiction treatment, prevention and treatment?
I was thinking more along the lines of how do you speak to people who are caught up in that? You know, I mean, so Bethany Hollom's success, I really feel like that's so Bethany Hollom, who, you know, she just got elected as county councilwoman at large. I mean, she was in jail for 5 months for, I think, heroin or opioid possession, and she made that a big part of her campaign, right? I hugely admire what she does. Honestly, she's she is an extremely proactive person who uses her story very effectively and does so in front of large rooms full of people. And yeah, no, I think she's actually she's sort of our AOC, honestly. She's our version of that for, you know, a region that is very much affected by drugs and crime, and she's born of it, you know.
So as I write these down, please let me know if I'm actually representing your thought accurately. Does that fit?
Yeah, just how do you speak to them, and how do you actually reach them on them? Not, yeah, how do you speak to their world?
Okay. This will be going into a Google document, and you can provide the edits as needed as well. So would someone here help me and take stack? So basically, just kind of make a list of who is raising their hands, and let's try to get them in order.
So locally,
Your name.
Dee Kucherka. So locally, we have a cracker plant, and we intend to build 4 more cracker plants. And we're building these cracker plants so that we can manufacture plastics, so we can provide plastics for the world. And we have our governor has put a ban on banning plastics. So what are we, as the people of this area, doing about this? And are we still using single-use plastics because no one's told us not to, or do you voluntarily take matters into your own hands and refuse them? I mean, that is very pivotal to Western Pennsylvania, the amount of environmental damage that the cracker plant and the fracking. You need 1,000 fracking wells every year for each cracker plant. So, I mean, this area is very unique in that we're really going to be promoting environmental crises here.
So fight cracker plant, fight ban on plastic bans. Does that catch it?
Okay, ready? Oh, one thing that immediately came to my mind was, oh, I'm sorry, I'm Renzi. And one thing that popped up into my mind is food access to healthy, whole food. It's a problem in a lot of neighborhoods in Pittsburgh, having access to healthy food. So I guess food sovereignty. And then, I think your hand.
Could we say healthy, affordable food?
Yes.
Thank you.
I hope I'm not, am I jumping the stack or? Oh, okay. I'm from Beaver County, and I'll tell you right now that love for the cracker has hegemony in Beaver County. We have a militant minority that opposes it, but most people, including most working class and poor people, love the cracker plant. They bought into it. They bought into the ideology that's been used to sell it. So we have to break up that ideology and create alternatives as part of our task, not only on paper, but in their ways of thinking. And one thing I wanted to point out about Carl's presentation is I didn't quite agree with, is the question of cutting back on, you know, our output of our economy, how we have to cut back on it. I don't think so, but I think we have to look at it in a different way, and I think if we look at it in a different way, we'll get some ideas on how we talk to people about new models for how to do it. There's a famous Chicago economist I studied once named Carl Romer. He drew a big circle, said, well, that's the economy. Then he divided it into 3 sectors. He says one sector is hardware, the other sector is software, and the third sector is wetware. Now, we all know what hardware is. That's cracker plants and plastic and steel mills and all of that stuff. We know what software is. That's books and libraries, stuff on computer disks and so on. But what's wetware? Wetware is software that's between your ears, what you know. So the reason why it's important to understand that that makes a whole economy, because then you can begin to understand that we want one sector of that economy to grow infinitely, which is the knowledge sector. We want it to grow infinitely. And the reason we want it to grow infinitely is because it's that one that will enable us to shrink the other one. The waste, the things that we don't need, how to make higher quality for less, how to get rid of cracker plants and use the sun. In order to be able to shrink that sector of the economy, we have to take another sector of the economy and expand it toward infinity. And if we work off of that model, I think we can come up with some better ideas than just telling people they have to give up their pickup trucks.
I want to speak to something that Carl and Fred raised, and that's how do we get to the people that are most affected by the fossil fuel debacle that we're in, and how do we get them to be part of a movement for change? And we had an experience down in Greene and Washington County with our chapters down there, where you have cancer clusters going on, and you have young kids who are dying of cancer or who have died of cancer, and their parents and their relatives and their neighbors are demanding to know why. And the system not only didn't answer them, but the system lied to them, and then the system turned their back on them. We need to go to those people, and we need to give them answers, and we need to give them hope, and we need to give them a vehicle to get involved in our movement. And the second thing I want to address, what Carl said, is we can talk about just transition, and we can talk about positive things and Green New Deals all we want, but if we don't address the military-industrial complex and the war and the empire, we will never, ever get anywhere, because we can propose and make all the changes that we want inside the United States, and if we continue to let this vampire rampage on the planet, all we do will be for naught. And lastly, we need a political movement. We can talk about everything we want, but if we don't translate what we want, and we don't take that just transition into the political arena and demand change, and if we don't get it, put our own people in there. If the people that are in there aren't going to do it, aren't going to take up our program, aren't going to take up our platform, then we let them know we're coming after them, and we're going to put people in there, and we don't give a damn what they have behind their name. We want people that are going to support our agenda and our program. And lastly, I want to say this again, and you're going to hear me say it every week and every time we come here. We have got to find the way to start speaking with one voice. If we do not let the powers that be know that we are a movement, that we're not a bunch of factions, we're not a bunch of dispersed groups that care about this, care about that, that the people that care about the environment, the people that care about dismantling the empire, the people that care about our transit system, the people that care about our infrastructure, and the people that care about a just transition, we're one movement. And we need to start speaking to the powers that be as one movement, because if they don't see us that way, then they're never going to even listen to us.
Very quickly.
Who's next then? Okay.
Tony, is your hand raised? Tony, has your hand been raised? Or did you just raise your hand?
Again, my name is Kareem. I'm with Unite, which is a PAC sponsored by Summer Lee, to do some of the things that we were just talking about, elect people who will fight for policy for us and not for corporate interests. So we do need alternatives to corporate-backed and corporate-funded politicians. Policy-wise, we need better infrastructure and more public transit so that people don't use their cars and don't use the kind of transport that we currently have. And we need to offer people job alternatives. We need to ask our government to be taking the right now billions that they put into subsidies and failing fossil fuel industries and put them towards green jobs and green job creation. Just like as Carl was saying, the reason people are so behind the cracker plant is that's what jobs is in that area. That's what puts food on the table. And we're not telling working people that they're the only ones who need to go without in this country. We need people at the very top to actually give those working people an alternative and a way to live a clean and healthy lifestyle.
No, but I'll put you on staff.
Pat Budemeyer, Quaker. Protect the commons, clean air, clean water, healthy soil, wildlife resources, which is guaranteed in our Constitution, our state constitution. So hold the people responsible for making sure that happens to account.
Hi, I'm Tony. I am not from Pittsburgh. I've been here for almost 3 years. I am the child of a now retired military officer, so I've lived a bunch of different places, so that's where I'm speaking from. And I wanted to connect to the comment made earlier about the military industrial complex. We have this discussion about when we move away from fossil fuels that we want to have those workers now go into green jobs. And I think that needs to apply to the military as well. We need to dismantle the military and transition those people into jobs like AmeriCorps jobs, green jobs that maintain the benefits that unfortunately many people join to receive. And then the second thing I wanted to bring up is that we talk about infrastructure, we talk about making buildings green. They also need to be accessible, especially in Pittsburgh, where it is an extremely inaccessible city to many people in the disability community, and that has to be addressed simultaneously. And we need to make sure that disabled voices are involved in this process.
Hi, my name is Wanda Guthrie, and I wanted to say that I really liked what Fred and Carl, thank you, Carl had to say. One thing that Fred said was he talked about spirituality, loving where we are, and working here where we are is really important. The other thing is when Carl talked about the kinds of changes that have to be made, I thought of the word regeneration that I've been hearing lately. Instead of sustainability, talking about regeneration. Sustainability is used by a lot of greenwashing folks. And to really talk about our young generation, our older generation, that we want to regenerate to something different.
So first I just had a point of clarification or a question. Is this a meeting of a Sunrise Movement?
No, actually, it was an informal group of people who've been working in all these various forms of organizing. Okay. At the end of last year, we were like, we need a discussion group. And so then we reached out to the Sunrise Movement and the Isaac Walton League and Extinction Rebellion, I'm so sorry. And they agreed to co-sponsor to help get the word out. But we're now, of course, like you've seen the speakers list, right? We're going to keep reaching out to all sorts of organizations, asking them to be in the room. I see this as really just a beginning, right? This first 5 months is going to barely scratch the surface. So I'm hoping that we continue this throughout the year and really start taking the policy proposals that we come up with and starting to fight for them. So, yeah.
We're interested in Sunrise meetings. We have like once a month, we post on our Facebook page, and we gladly accept more students. We need more people.
Yes, so I guess just the thing I was going to say is, was that me up? No, okay. In the spirit of bringing the right kind of voices into the conversation, clearly young people are going to be disproportionately impacted by the coming crisis. And so a question is, why aren't there more young people in this room right now? Why aren't there young people running the meeting or being at least co-sponsors of the meeting? And also just a general comment that the loudest voices aren't apt to be, we were talking about speaking with one voice, but I mean, that's not the same as speaking with the loudest voice. So who's being left out if you're only speaking with a loud voice?
Hi, this is Paige. I'm originally from Albany, New York. I've lived here for a little over 2 years, or maybe 2 years. Anyway, I see exactly what you're saying, and I think there's a lot of communities that aren't but should absolutely be not scrutinized, but rather uplifted in this movement, including with what would come with eradicating the prison industrial complex. Addressing homelessness by giving everyone homes is something other countries are doing, and in line with that notion of European-style environmentalism, looking at the kind of jobs that come with the technology that's available that can be harnessed through innovation for cleaning up what is already done that we are now understanding with new technology. We have a really, like for housing with lead in the soil, for example, a great understanding of something that we previously had ignored, and then just treating people, with care, updating our system of response for environmental refuse comes with like innovation, just a shift in that kind of an ideological thinking.
Justin has said his hand up for a while, so I'll yield to him and come back.
Justin in the jacket?
Justin, thank you.
Okay.
He has, but he also opened up the
Okay.
conversation. I don't know, maybe I took liberties there, but I was going to hold off on repeating folks and let people who haven't spoken first. So that's what I was technically for.
Jerry Walsh. I just wanted to say that I think a critical step in this process is to actually create a truly representative government. We cannot have a plutocracy deciding who we get to vote for. But I believe that the government has to support elections with a short period where people can campaign, not be campaigning throughout their entire term of office, but have it restricted and government supported.
Fred Brown from the Forward Funds, and I'm a Pittsburgher, born and raised in Homewood. So we got a couple of trajectories we know. By 2050, 70% of the world's population will live in the urban corridor. In the city of Pittsburgh, our foundations have $10.3 billion in assets. DHS, the building we're sitting in, has $1 billion budget. PPS provides $25,000 per pupil cost. So on average, we've yet to talk about in this room, how are we assessing the current distribution of resources and their projected measurable outcomes against anything we're talking about as we pursue next steps in our work. I think it's incumbent upon this group and other groups to really assess, what do we have that's working? How are we using those resources in an effective and efficient way? And how can we use this movement as a galvanizing force to bring other people to the table once we look at the distribution of those resources and their expected impacts in the sector? Secondly, we know by 2025, there's projected to be 85,000 vacant jobs in IT and manufacturing, in conjunction with the fact that 40,000 kids graduate a year in our 10-county area, 20,000 of them leave the day after graduation. We have a brain drain in this sector. We're the second largest LE population in the country. That's an asset to me that's untapped, as well as emerging opportunities as we're hollowing out. We used to have 1 million people. We have 310,000 in the city, 1.3 million in the county. And as you look at the other surrounding counties, they're hollowing out. They're getting older. We need to be thinking strategically around, how do we look at this entire southwestern region as an ecosystem, and how everybody's interest in this room has to operate at a micro, meso, and macro level. We got to educate and inform people on the ground. We got to get nonprofits to do their work in a meaningful way, and we have to get governments to function in a way that's meaningful to people. And then we have to create a vertical integration into that process to create some way that we modulate that so it runs at the same frequency and velocity to create systemic change. We have to look at what we already have, before we start adding on to other things. I think that's where this goes wrong to me. I've been doing this for 35 years. We keep adding on stuff, and it's good stuff. But what we've done is, in my sector, we've created a nonprofit industrial complex. It supports 26% of the non-technical workforce in the city of Pittsburgh. If you do away with it, you automatically increase unemployment rates exponentially. You understand what I'm saying? The system has to be more equipped to be accountable before we start adding on things to it. And this can be concurrent, but we can't add on without taking into account the things that are already in place, being funded, that's not doing what it's supposed to do. And if that's the case, how are we holding those things accountable? We got to start there. There's no way to create equity and inclusion and transparency without starting there, in my opinion, my humble opinion.
So just a time check here. We're at 7:05. We want to respect people's time. If you need to leave, feel free to do that. Know that these are germs. We're going to put this on a Google Doc. You're going to be able to expound. If I didn't get it right, change it, revise it. You can add to it. So do people in general want to extend our time, like by another 10 minutes? Let's do the finger waggle of yes. 10 minutes, okay. All right.
Okay, I'm Henry Gonzalez. It occurs to me, just listening to everybody here, people are speaking from their passions. Lots of organizations represented here today, all that I'm sure are doing fantastic work and making progress. But my sense is that the big movement, the big advances are not going to happen, especially for those time-sensitive things like the environment, et cetera. Are not going to happen until we deal with the campaign finance reform issue, which is alluded to here. How can we expect our government representatives to do the kinds of things that we're talking about here if we don't have the muscle or the ability to match what the corporate world is doing in terms of providing the money that the politicians are after, that lead them in a direction that's completely opposite in the direction that we want to go with. So what I'm wondering is, in this group, aside from all of the individual issues and ideas that are being raised, is there some sort of umbrella type of approach that can be taken to the general campaign finance reform issue that I think is necessary to address to allow those big decisions and plans and movements to happen?
Hi, I'm Mary Beth Manarino. I wanted to build on something someone said earlier about change being very hard. And I think one of the things that we have to keep in mind is that we're all pretty well educated about the issues and highly motivated to work on this. But for many, many people in our community, change is going to be very hard. And we're going to need to find a way to support people as they face the scary changes that they're going to have to deal with. And so I would incorporate some kind of emotional, psychological education of the public that we're all in this together, and it won't be surprising to experience this in a very scary way, but that as a community we can do it.
I've heard a few people mention the military-industrial complex, and I think that what needs to be included in that is the police. We need to demilitarize the police as well, because without that, we're not going to have a just and equitable society.
If Terry in the red.
Hi, I'm Terry. I think change is hard for everybody. And it's going to be harder for some, but all of us here are aware of the issue, but I bet some of us are still using using plastic water bottles or using clamshells, and I'm just talking about in terms of a personal life. I'm still driving a car. I keep on thinking I should sell my car and not drive a car, but I'm still driving a car. And, you know, these great big things, I think somebody said that if everybody is doing it, if we're all making those changes, I think that's what's going to help all of us to do it.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Speranza. I live in the city neighborhood of Brookline, and I'm an artist. Wow, I don't even know where to start, so I'll try to keep it really brief. In terms of changing the color of this room, I strongly suggest for these different meetings, finding other locations around the county, around the city. Like, we should be meeting in Clairton. We should be meeting in Braddock and North Braddock. I'm one of those people that I don't live in Summerlee's jurisdiction, but I happily made phone calls for her campaign, and now she's under attack because she stood so strongly for no fracking. I don't know what the status is, and maybe Carl could update us, but there was one of the so I'm in the arts, so I'm very sensitive to this, one of the very few African-American architects, Walter Hood, came to our city, and he did this amazing thing called the Green Plan for the Hill District. And I would be very interested in seeing the Green Plan exported and replicated in African-American communities around this city and then around the county, and then take it as a model to other parts of the country. So in terms of, you know, AOC is asking, what do we want? That's what I want. And I want a vehicle for white people to partner with Black people, which is something I've been working on for, I don't know, since 2013, in meaningful, constructive ways. That's organizing, where people can be heard. I have a student, a former student, she was my student in 2005. We've been friends ever since. And she grew up in Clairton, and she's told me things about like her family and her cousins, like everybody. She is an example of Clairton, and she's in her late 20s, and she just got married. And we're talking about like, how do we have Clairton have a voice in the presidential campaign? But I'm very clear it's going to come from her and her cousins and her family, not from me. And I'm like, Morgan, how can I partner with you? How can I support you? Can I come to Clairton? Can we make a video? Can we Like, how can I support? And she says what it's about is getting her community heard. Like, she's going to get beyond her own shyness and what holds her back and speaking out, because it's about getting her community heard. So that's the kind of thing that I want. I want vehicles for that. Thank you.
Who's next?
There's nobody new, so if we want to wrap, or goes to
Yeah, I'd say let's keep it to one more speaker, because we do need to wrap up.
Yes, I'm Walt Kucharka with the Isaac Walton League. Going back to what, just the topic that we had for green jobs, and what Fred was talking about kind of stimulated me. I think we need to, the publicity has to go out there as to what these jobs are, who would qualify for these jobs, some kind of a pathway to these jobs. I think a lot of people that are currently working, younger people, our son and his friends are making pretty good money now, the way things are. And we're showing them statistics about all the green jobs in the area, and we can't really give him an example because he's not an electrician and he doesn't want to, you know, install panels or whatever it might be. And I'm sure there's other jobs. I'm sure there's driving jobs. I'm sure. I just don't know where to direct him. And I know the unions are probably involved in this kind of stuff, but maybe we could be a collection for a pathway to a green job. And, you know, the people that are, not only people that are going to take other jobs, you know, because their jobs are going to be ended, you know, in the oil and gas well, but maybe just people coming up, you know, kids that don't qualify for college or can't afford college or going to go to college part-time. What can they be doing in the green job marketplace? So.
Okay, thank you. Now, out of this meeting, there were some real calls for change in how we run these meetings, right? So those, you know, we need more outreach and invitations to people of color, to young people, into organizing these meetings. Those who raise those points, I invite you to be part of the leadership and the organizing of this team.
I don't think I'm young enough.
Okay? So if you know some people who are young enough, invite them. And, you know, working with Sean, you know, there's this incredible effort that they've been making that you can be built on. So this was all thrown together very quickly, right? But we can correct course for the future. You raised having meetings in places like Clariton. So could you help? If we work with you to set up a meeting in Clariton, will you be part of that?
Yes.
Great. Other people who have concerns about the way that these could go for the future, please come, you know, reply to the email that I send out after this. You know, and there will be a website that Dean Mugianis will be launching.
It's actually up there, gnd-discussion.org. GND for Green New Deal -discussion.org.
We will also be sending out an invitation to the Slack channel to begin the conversation there. And you will receive a link to the Google document where we will start creating this messy, rough draft of, you know, these germs of what we want to see in a Green New Deal. So you all have the list of the upcoming speakers and topics. If there are things that are of particular interest to you, start writing down your ideas. I've been like putting together this massive resource list on all kinds of different topics. On the Slack channel, there'll be a place where links, I might create a Google Doc, where we can put resources, information resources that can be helpful to us, both in terms of thinking about the broad problems and potential solutions.
Ellen, are we thinking of doing a small group discussion thing next time? Like, will it be mostly based around this format or that?
That's open for discussion. The only hesitation I have, I've seen many times good ideas are lost because, so as long as we really capture the good ideas in small groups, I think that's perfectly possible. So
I would have much preferred that, honestly.
Okay, all right. So who here would like us to break up into small groups for this final part of each evening? Let's just get a kind of temperature of the room.
If we have this many people.
Yeah. And so, okay, now who prefers the large group?
At this stage.
I was going to say, once we start fleshing out particular ideas.
Yeah. So here's a suggestion, right? This first series of 5 months, right? We're trying to reach a very broad audience. We're trying to really bring a lot of different kinds of people into the room. Just this is a proposal that at the end of the 5 months, we'll know each other better. We'll have a sense of who is interested in what. And we could then break into working groups to really flesh out the details of various aspects of what we have begun. Does that make sense to folks? Yeah. Raise your hand if it does. Okay, raise your hand if it doesn't. Okay. All right, thank you all. Thank you. All right, well, wait. Yes. For next time. So Terry, bless her heart, she's told me yesterday, what do you mean you're going to have paper plates? What? So I have a favor for all of you. I am asking all of you, bring your own plate, fork, spoon, knife, water bottle, and try to avoid plastic, right? Let's try to live it, right? It's like, I agree with those who say it has to be deep systemic change, and we individually cannot just do the right thing and make a change. But here in this room, let's try to do our best, right? and you know, this has great bus lines, and there's all kinds of ways that we can live out our principles and get to know the systems that we want to support. So thank you. All right.
I have one more thing to add. You know, instead of just preaching to the choir all the time, which is what a lot of us do, is we also want to have a broader educational outreach effort. So me and Helen's already published or tried publishing an article. And so if any of you have experience in writing or want to write about a certain topic that is within the Green New Deal framework, come to us and Please. That'd be great. So
yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.